Story 1. Self-published romance novels in 2014. Within about 6 months of my first book, I was making about $40,000 a month. Story 2. Went to a casino with my family. My father gave me $20 to gamble with, but I chose not to and walked away $20 up instead. Story 3. I sold things from my home. All I had to do was answer a couple of texts or calls. Sometimes after they bought the items, they would share. I am a family man now and no longer partake in those activities. Story 4. Stocks. Checked them and one of them was worth $1,000. Other than that, selling movies on eBay. Found a movie for less than $2 that was an obscure martial arts film and sent it to the Czech Republic for $100. Most profitable sale I have ever had. Story 5. Professional musician here. We agreed to a private show for a concrete company's end-of-year party. They had rented out a Holiday Inn, and we would be playing in the conference room. This was not something we normally did, but our drummer knew the owners and secured an agreement of $6,000 to do it. 3-piece band, $2,000 each for a few hours of work and travel. We finished our normal set and just messed around. The owner, a rather large man in his mid-40s, brought in a kiddie pool, filled it with red gelatin, got mostly naked, and challenged people to wrestle him in it. In the conference room of a Holiday Inn while a drunk band putzed around behind him. Worth it. Story 6. I got fed up with a project partner who was completely incompetent. I told my boss I needed to be removed from the project because I could not work with this person anymore. They agreed but came back a week later and asked me to reconsider because the project was failing. I calmly told them this: I will continue if I receive a significant pay increase. Otherwise, I will focus on my other job duties at my current pay. Honestly, I expected to start looking for a new job. I was really frustrated and was being honest at that point. To my astonishment, they doubled my pay and gave me the autonomy to request a few extras for my team. A 2-minute conversation changed my financial trajectory forever. It was the only time I have ever asked for a raise. The project went well as I asserted myself. The other partner is still there for some reason. Story 7. Instead of trying to play the market, I looked for new technology coming out in my field of expertise. There is always something new on the horizon of every field. Looking at your area with your insider knowledge makes you better at judging what will work and what will not. I made some investments in new technology and within 5 years it had exploded in value. Story 8. I made $100 for pulling a rope. I know $100 is not a lot of money by most standards, but as the typical broke college student, it was a windfall. I had a friend who was the head of a dance troupe putting on a show when we were in college. She asked me if I would work the stage curtain for them. I agreed, and for 2 nights, I opened and closed a curtain between dance acts. They paid me $100. Story 9. Not sure about the easiest way, but the hardest way I ever made a lot of money was losing my parents. Story 10. GameStop. Made about $200,000. If I had not been greedy and had not removed my $420.69 limit, I would have made approximately $600,000. This still helped my retirement goals significantly. I was mainly playing with a small individual retirement account. Story 11. Easy and making a lot of money do not go hand in hand. If they did, it would be closely guarded. The only answer to this question is to have a substantial amount of money already and invest it. Story 12. I know Reddit is going to hate this, but I bought a memecoin early and made over $1 million. It was entirely lucky. I got in at the right time and I did not round trip it. It is still the best day of my life. To be honest, my biggest stress in life was always having enough money to pay for my children's education. That stress is gone now. The mental shift this created has been overwhelming in a good way. I am not worried about bills or surprise expenses. I am not checking my accounts every day. I feel like I can finally breathe. I know how rare this is. I am not trying to show off. I am just grateful and honestly still in shock. Story 13. Not me exactly, but waiting for wealthy relatives to pass away. My cousins by marriage are completely waiting for one or both parents to die so they do not have to work anymore. Two of them are stepchildren of the man who has the money. Surprise, he is not going to give them anything. It all goes to his son who has no work ethic and has never done a hard day's work in his life. He currently works for his father. Story 14. Bought a decent amount of a penny stock and it increased tenfold. Sold my shares to pay off my tuition bill from my previous school so I could enroll in nursing school. That investment continues to pay dividends. Story 15. Bought a house some years ago in an up-and-coming area. Not currently making money, but its value has increased 15% over the last 5 years, and my mortgage interest rate will be 1% until it is paid off. Story 16. Easy but not quick. Save and invest. Compound interest is your friend. Put some money from your paycheck into a fund of some kind and forget about it. I started to do this in my 20s. I am now in my 60s and about to retire, and I do not have to worry about money. Time goes faster than you think. Story 17. I had a friend with benefits who lived about 30 minutes from me. I always went to her because I am a gentleman. One day, she gave me $100 for gas money. Story 18. Find something to sell that people really want for more than you can buy it for. This made me my first million. Good luck. Story 19. Dumpster diving furniture to flip. It is how we stayed afloat during the pandemic. We made enough to cover the mortgage and necessities for a few years. Most of the furniture we found was in excellent condition. Story 20. Selling items on Electronic Bay. I once sold knobs from a stereo receiver and amplifier I found on the streets. I think I got $76 for 11 knobs back in the early 1990s. That was a lot of money for me then. They are small, easy, and cheap to ship, and not many people sell them. Story 21. I did a scene with a woman I had just met in front of a man who liked to watch such things. She earned more than I did. Story 22. Repairing game consoles is highly profitable if you are fast, skilled, and charge a reasonable rate. Story 23. Played around early on in the Ethereum ecosystem. Used some fascinating technology, and as an early adopter, I got airdrop tokens into my wallet as a thank you. Several of these applications made it big over the years, and my early bags of tokens suddenly became worth 6 figures, with no initial investment from my end. In 2022, I happened to need some money in real life for some investments. I sold a large part of it, and it turned out I hit the top of the market. Pure luck. After this little adventure, I have always been proud of being a computer nerd. Story 24. Doing my job. I was hired as a project manager and delivered a series of projects on time and under budget. I received a $17,000 bonus for my work. Story 25. I was backpacking in Australia and went broke. I picked up a job collecting rocks in sandy, freshly fire-cleared fields for 3 weeks. I went from broke to well-prepared for my next adventures quickly. It was easy because it involved picking up rocks and walking. It was hard because the temperature was over 45 degrees Celsius with high humidity. I still look back at it as a great time. Story 26. Selling and installing PlayStation 1 modification chips and pirated video games. My biggest seller was Dragon Ball Z-based content. The show had taken off in the United States, and there were no English-translated games. So the demand for modification chips and the games was high. Story 27. I suspect the best, most honest answer to this question will be, outlived my family. I mean, arguably it is emotionally difficult, but in terms of ease with regard to effort, I believe it is far ahead of most other answers. Story 28. I was a beauty blogger in 2015. It was the easiest money I ever made until Instagram came and changed the industry. Story 29. Buying and selling stocks. The best returns I have had were taking part in the Wall Street Bets GameStop and AMC squeezes and Nintendo with the Wii. Story 30. I go to college for free, and when I do not subscribe to their full meal plan, I somehow get a refund for the meal plan and receive about $3,000 to spend for the year. Story 31. Selling websites in the pre-WordPress era. I was 16 and had a code stack made in PHP with a very rudimentary content management system from an assignment at IT school. I could just change the layout. Many small businesses in my hometown needed a website, and I was happily quoting them 7,500 euros per website, which was half the usual price of a professional company. For that amount, they also received my help writing text, ensuring the website appeared in Google search results, and I hosted the website for free, as the traffic was very slow and basically non-existent. Story 32. Bought a flat during a housing boom on a full mortgage in a country that does not agree that capital gains should be taxed. Story 33. Over $3,000, about $7,000 in 2025 dollars, in 2 months for a free nude of the day webpage I put up in the early days of the internet in 1995 and 1996 when one company was highly overpaying for banner ad clicks. In the early days of the internet, with platforms like America Online, Yahoo, AltaVista, and others, I set up a page with a few pictures of naked or partially naked women. I found these pictures online. I knew I did not have the copyright, so I put a disclaimer that if a copyright holder saw one of their images on my page, they could email me and I would take it down. No one ever did. I spent some time getting my page to show up higher in Yahoo and AltaVista results for free nude girls, or similar terms. I was offered an ad banner deal with an adult products company that did not really know what they were doing as far as online advertising. They were paying about 1 cent per impression, which means someone sees the page with the ad, and an astronomical 10 cents per click-through, meaning someone actually clicked on the ad and ended up at their website. I figured maybe I would get some extra money out of it. The first month, I received a handwritten check for over $1,000. I would add a new picture every day so people would keep coming back, and I think visitors could browse previous pictures from the past 7 days or so. My internet service provider noticed the increased traffic and asked me to put up a landing page where people had to agree that they were at least 18 years old and wanted to see nudity. I did that. They also said I might need to switch to a commercial account and would let me know later, but they never did. The next month, the check was for over $2,000. I started getting scared because I had a decent government job, and this was kind of questionable since the pictures were not mine and the content was adult. It turned out I did not have to worry because right after my second check, the company announced they would no longer pay for impressions and would only pay for click-throughs when someone clicked through to their site and actually made a purchase. Those click-throughs would now pay several dollars each. The next month, there was no check. Not one single person who clicked on their ad on my page actually bought anything from them. I kept the page going for a few months but never made another dollar from it. Story 34. I bought items at auction for cheap and sold them for a profit. One item was a piece of heavy equipment. I never even took delivery but sold it for $20,000, doubling my money. All I did was make a few phone calls. Story 35. My first job was low paid, and when moving to another job, I was still relatively low paid compared to my industry. After gaining management status and discovering I was earning less than the person I was managing, who was hired through a recruiter, I asked for a modest raise and received it. A few months later, I switched jobs using a recruiter and made progress in another startup. It was not a significant jump in terms of company size, but when discussing salary in a moment of confidence, I proposed a 40% increase compared to my current earnings, and they accepted it. Story 36. Got good at my job. When I was younger, a good way to make money was to fix up old cars and sell them for a profit. Story 37. Got a second job. I do not mean a small side gig serving food or stocking shelves. I literally landed a second job in my primary skill area. Not only did I double my income, but I also doubled my experience growth rate and improved my skills. I received promotions at both jobs. This approach likely works better for design, thinking, and problem-solving occupations than for manual labor or sales jobs. Your mileage may vary. Story 38. Went to the casino when I had a couple of hours to kill. There was a promotion going on and I received $25 in free play. I used it on a slot machine and won $1,200. I promptly walked away. Story 39. Selling cannabis. That was when I was in high school and had no prior income. It was amazing how low effort it was. Looking back, I was very foolish doing it, and it wasn't even that much money compared to what I do now, which is taxi driving. I work 250 hours a month, but I have top 5% income in my region. Story 40. I worked for a company that gave stock options for various incentives. It was kind of a company joke because the stock was poor and never increased in value. Then one month there were rumors that we were being bought out, which did not happen, and the stock jumped for the first and last time. I cashed out 5 years' worth of options for approximately $38,000. Story 41. Depends on your definition of a lot. I have done wedding getaway drives in my vintage Volkswagen bus and made roughly $400 an hour. Story 42. Over time, a high-yield savings account and index fund investing with a company automatic match. The power of compounding is easy money over time. Story 43. Current job. I have earned more in the last 4 years than ever before. My 2024 W-2 form showed my highest earnings to date. Electronic discovery does not require a degree. Story 44. Depends on what you consider a lot. A few weeks ago, I was busking with a guitarist around the corner from the White House, and while singing Solidarity Forever, some guy walked up and handed me a $100 bill. So that was cool. Story 45. A friend and I moved to Northern California in 2003. We grew a large amount of cannabis that first year, took it back home, and sold it. We made close to $250,000 each. The next year, we invested in a bigger grow. 3 weeks before harvest, we were told to evacuate due to a fire. We came back a few weeks later, and the crop and house were destroyed by the fire. I left and went home. Story 46. I went to a garage sale about 20 years ago and saw a bunch of Star Wars toys. I turned one over and it said 1977 on the bottom, so I bought as many as I could with the $20 I had. A friend of mine bought a few superhero dolls that were also from the 1970s. We went to an automated teller machine to get more cash, but by the time we got back, all the old toys were sold. I ended up making about $1,000 on the toys I bought, but my friend made closer to $3,000. Story 47. Drug dealing. I was nearly homeless and sold a bunch of marijuana one summer. It made me enough money to feed myself and buy clean clothes. I got a legitimate job that fall. I have not used any drugs in 30 years. Story 48. Bitcoin. I bought 3 around 2015 for about $700 because a friend kept telling me I had to get on board. I then pretty much forgot about them until I heard Bitcoin was exploding around 2020 and sold them for $60,000. It's a pity because if I had held on to them, they would be worth around $300,000 today. I know a guy from just a couple of years ago who sunk his life savings into them around 2015 and is now a legitimate multimillionaire. Story 49. My parents gave me money for a down payment on a triplex. I lived in one unit for 6 years, rented out the other 2, and paid off most of the mortgage with the rent from the other 2. I converted the property into condominiums, gave my parents their money back 4 times over, and had enough cash to buy a small house outright. Story 50. Bearings. Skateboarders often need to replace their bearings, which are rings of small metal balls that help the wheels spin. It is often easy to find skateboards with lightly used bearings for free or very cheap. New boards can get waterlogged, break, or people may try skateboarding, quit, and give away their boards. The dumpster near my skate park is full of broken boards. I take the bearings from old boards, clean them, lubricate them, and sell them to skaters at the park. A new set of decent bearings costs about $20. My price for a set was $8, a few beers or one decent-sized joint. Story 51. I worked through coronavirus disease 2019, and my company paid time and a half for doing so for basically an entire year. I saved like $8,000 to $10,000 in a year. Story 52. Bought 5 industrial heating refrigerators at an auction for 4 cents. Sold scrap metal and large copper heating elements for $800. Story 53. A shady car dealership dealer asked me to lend him money with a 30% payback the next week. I accepted and he paid the money back. Felt very suspicious. A few weeks later, his car dealership was gone. Story 54. I have a few. Changed jobs. I once took a job that not only offered me $10,000 per year more than what I was making, but they also gave me $2,000 per month extra for a year until I grew my client base. On top of the salary, I also earned commission. Changing jobs was the easy part. The job itself was not easy. Car accident. I sued the lady and won a significant amount of money. 2 out of 10, I do not really recommend this. Sold a couple of houses. I was moving anyway and made a lot of money on both sales. I got lucky with the market, though. Story 55. Bought cryptocurrency for $50 and sold 3 months later for $660 because that gain was suspicious. Crashed hard soon after. It was a significant percentage gain, of course. Story 56. Solved final exam exercises. To be honest, I solved mine, then copied the files and renamed them. Sold them for $50 per copy. Story 57. Logged into my old Counter-Strike Global Offensive account after many years and sold all my skins and items. I made a pretty penny, I'll tell you that. Story 58. The company I worked for gave me stock options basically for free as a retention bonus when they were going through a rough patch during the early days of the coronavirus pandemic. I would forfeit the options if I left. Some of my coworkers who had children were more risk-averse and left, so our headcount was fairly low. It was my first job out of college, so I did not worry much about losing my job. A few years later, the company was sold, and I sold my options for 6 figures. I say it was easy because I just did my job as normal but received a lump sum from it. Story 59. Sold space brownies in high school with some girl classmates I met in culinary arts. I never intended to join culinary, but I did it just to be with my crush back then. However, I didn't get the same class period as her. The girls I met were seniors and needed extra money to spend on parties and senior graduation day. I offered the idea as a joke, but they took it as an opportunity. We sold around 800 to 1,000 brownies, priced from $10 to $15 depending on the size. We even sold outside of school on weekends, and each of us received our fair share each week based on sales. I made around $2,000 that junior year. By senior year, I wanted to continue the small business, but it just wasn't the same without those girls. Story 60. Most days, I sit at a desk, send emails, and make calls. This work funds my life and retirement. Story 61. I lied and said I had my captain's license in 2018. I made $400 in 2 hours driving a family around Destin waters in a pontoon boat. Story 62. Working as a contractor in the public sector, I would probably prefer a permanent role with lower pay at this point because it becomes tedious moving from role to role. However, the advantage is that the pay is very high for comparatively little effort. Story 63. Took out a $200,000 home equity line of credit, invested, gambled it, and ended up with a $350,000 profit. I regretted being reckless and have since limited my investments to S&P 500 mutual funds. Story 64. No one makes a lot of money easily. They either make it hard through trades or a specialist job, or they make it smart through investments over decades. Easy money is easily lost. Consistency is what you want. The world is big enough for you to work hard and smart to live a life where your bills are paid, your debts are paid, and you are saving money for big-ticket items. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.